Welcome to this week's adventure into passionate living. I'm here in downtown Buffalo, New York, and on today's show we have some amazing guests. We're going to meet a young woman whose story is so powerful, and she has taken the challenges of her youth and channeled them into the most beautiful art, and you'll get to see that later today on the show. I'm going to sit with a new segment today with Samantha Latshaw, and we're going to have tea time and share some fun, passionate ideas with you. For anybody who needs an escape from the day-to-day and you can't afford to rent a hotel room for a couple of hours to just go and get away from all of the stresses of life, or maybe the family, or just need a little breather, there is a great alternative for you that you might not have even thought about to look for in your community. But first, we are going to meet a woman who is a hero of mine. She is a powerhouse. She is the first Black female to own a radio station in all of upstate New York. Come on in and let's take our first adventure into passionate living. Wow, Sheila, look at this place. This is amazing.
Yeah, we really put a lot of work into the Black Radio History Collective to really preserve 50 years, 60 years of WUFO history.
Wow.
You know, it's just amazing, the rich history that WUFO has. So we said, look, let's bottle it all up and put it in here so people can really see the story of what we have. So this is just the collectives.
Yeah.
We worked with Buffalo State College and Buffalo, their Museum of Science, you know, and normally they do a makeshift museum. This was the first time they were able to come, interview me, their classes. They did like 3 semesters of it. And I tell you, Cynthia is an amazing professor. She really did it. So when they first came in, this is how the space looked. And now this is what we want it to look like once it's all finished and laid out.
Amazing.
And then we're gonna
have
work
this in the corridor.
in the corridor.
I mean, it's so rich here. All of the museums that are here now. You know, to capture. Part of the culture.
So the thing is,
rich.
we want people to be able to go from the Jesse Nash House to the church, Colored Musicians Club, and then come over here to WFO, because it's all rich culture and all rich history. So to do a nice tour around it would just be amazing. I started the station in 1986.
Now
so this is my era.
Are the first and only woman of color to own a radio station in Buffalo, New York.
In Buffalo, all upstate New York.
All upstate New York.
Yep, all up.
Amazing.
So, you know, God he just answered all my prayers. When I left the radio station, it was 1998. I didn't cut the ribbon of me being owner until 2013.
Wow.
So I waited all those years, but working, writing my business plan, perfecting my business plan, meeting the right people, going to banks saying, no, okay, let me perfect this, because then maybe they'll say, yeah, let me do this. I started my own ad agency. You know, I worked at several radio stations. I worked at a television station, where I think I learned the most in my career at that particular television station. Some amazing people that worked there. Now, I did leave there kind of cloudy, you know? But I learned,
shake it up a little bit.
I had to shake it
up.
up.
And you are not a person that just sits by idly and lets things go. You are a shaker and a mover, and that's
that was it.
The passion. That's the driving force that helped you, as well as spirit. It was your strong
and that's what
spirit.
it was. It was the spirit. And you know, I think that sometimes when you're moving and people don't move as quick as you do, sometimes they don't take it too lightly. But I'm telling you, the most wonderful people that I met, I still talk to them now. They are amazing people that I work with. So I left there and I started my own ad agency. And that's when it really rippled effect for me, when I started my own ad agency. And I had to go back to WUFO because one of my clients was bringing in a gospel concert. So for 8 years, I never turned to WFO. I never passed it, because in my mind, I'm like, hey, I'm coming back to buy you, right? So I go into WUFO and I, you know, it's a gospel station, so it's a gospel client of mine. I got to do them justice. I would have did them a disservice if I didn't, spend money on WFO. So I went in and I met the most wonderful person, Carol Salter Glover. And she said, hey, the phone so often rings with people, asking for you. Would you ever consider coming back here? And I'm like saying to myself, chuckling, like, come back here. I'm coming back here to buy it, not to work, right? And so anyway, I go back to my ad agency, and about 2 days later, she calls me. She's like, hey, would you think about coming back here? I'm like, well, Carol, I have my ad agency right now. And she said, well, I talked to the owners, and they said you can bring the ad agency with you. And I'm like, what? So the same position that I left in 1998 as sales manager, I returned back in 06 as sales manager. So we never know what our destiny is going to be. You just don't know.
And then it was 2 years later that you bought it?
I was able to, well, no, because 06, 2013.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So I piqued their interest, because now I'm working for the company again.
Yeah.
So now, okay, how did this happen? Like, how did I even get back here, right? So then I'm like, okay, so then a few years later, the company Sheridan Broadcasting, they had a huge 50,000 watt station in Pittsburgh. So I heard they were selling that. And I'm like, okay, if they're selling that big baby, they're gonna be selling this sun up, sundown station, right? I said, time is now. So I piqued their interest, and right away they said yes. Said when they said yes, I wasn't totally ready. I didn't have funding, I hadn't have everything in order. But they said, I knew.
You knew in your heart.
I knew.
You knew you were going to get it.
I knew. And I'm telling you, we just worked it. We worked it. I did everything I need to do, except a lot of no's, a lot of crying, a lot of bumpy on my knees praying, all of that to make it happen. And then that day when we cut the ribbon was just so amazing.
Sheila, can you show me around the radio station?
Please, let's go. Because this here is the nonprofit arm of WUFO. So this is our radio history collective. So let me take you to show you the live radio station in here. So now this is how the station actually looked before I actually did all what I did, right? So I had a vision. I was like, nope, I could see it. I know it. Everybody thought I was straight crazy, right? But this is what it looked like before we brought it to what it is today. None of, yeah.
Completely different.
Completely different, yeah. So we had to truly, all the walls you see, all cubicles, everything you see is what we actually built and actually put together. None of this was here, So it just was amazing. You want to go into the newsroom or conference room? Yeah. Okay, yeah. So inside of here, we kind of did it all. And then here is the newsroom. So we had this amazing girl paint the table for me.
This is beautiful.
Actually, my staff kind of surprised me one day, and they were like, we have this girl coming in from New York City, and she's originally from Buffalo, but it had been gone for years and years and years. And she came in and she painted this table for us because we're celebrating 60 years in the industry. So they were trying to take it back to like in 1961 when the station started, doing graffiti and stuff like that. So yeah, she did an amazing job.
That's
so
great.
When I do my show, this is where I sit. So they got SLB right there. And I named this room Carol Slaughter Glover. She was GM. That same year, we went to Live Remote, and it was in Niagara Falls, but it was a gospel one. And they said, hey, you two come up. And I'm like, I know they're not talking to us. We're behind the controls, right? And they said, they started talking to me. You're going to run the station. You're going to do good. Now, no one knew my dream of that. That was when I came back in 06.
So they said that even before you had announced your dream to anybody.
Absolutely, yeah. And
I
so
got
then,
chills.
yeah. And so then the next year is when Carol got sick. And so she left the station. She said, I'm just going to go to Sister Hospital real quick. She had like this big red mark, but I knew it was a blood clot. So she goes to Sisters, and so 2 days go by, and I'm like, hey, Carol, what's going on? I got to come see you. And when I went to see her, she said, you ready? And I said, what do you mean? She said, you remember what that preacher said a year ago? She said, are you ready? I said, oh, Carol, you're going to be fine. She said, no, I have 3 spots on my lungs, 3 on my brain. And so I'm thinking maybe she knew a year ago, and that's why she wanted me to come back.
Wow.
So she made it for like 8 months, and then she passed away. So I dedicate this full room to her. She ever stays in my heart with that. And, you know,
beautiful.
yeah. So that's how this room became Carol Salter Glover. Yeah.
This is really amazing.
Yeah. And
What a
so
tribute to her soul.
the bathrooms are Aretha Franklin. You know, Aretha Franklin, you know, her dad actually was a minister at Friendship Baptist Church.
Really?
Yeah, here in the city of Buffalo.
I had no idea.
Yeah. So she spent like
How
6.
did we not know these?
Exactly. So she spent like 6 years of her life here in the city of Buffalo. So inside the bathroom is everything about Aretha Franklin. So it's all her albums, all of her albums on the wall, and her papers, and you know, all of that. Yeah, it's all about Aretha Franklin.
This is great.
Yeah. And so we did the same
just
thing.
Come out and hang
Oh yeah,
There's
here
like all
exactly.
this powerful woman energy over
And then we did the same thing for the men. So we turned the men into, because the thing about it is, in the 60s, the music that people of color was used to hearing, now they were able to hear James Brown when they turn on the radio.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You are a powerhouse, a leader, and I'm so grateful to have you with me today on the show.
Thank you so
You're
much.
the epitome of passionate living.
I love it. I love that. I love that. Thank you so much for taking the time to come to the studios and, you know, learn my story, walk with me through the journey of it all. Sometimes I still like, oh my God, what's next? So thank you.
You'll find out.
I'll find out.
You always find out.
I'll find out. Yep. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you for joining us today on this magical ride into passionate living. Join us each week on Tuesday and Thursday evenings at 8 and Sunday mornings at 11. Plus, you can view segments of our show on YouTube at passionateliving.tv or on our website at passionateliving.com. Our goal in producing the show is to inspire you to live your dreams, as your journey will end up affecting the world around you in a powerful way. We hope you'll join us each week as we journey into the realms of passionate living. Until our next adventure, remember to take at least one baby step to bring you a little closer to living your dreams.